was just a punter in a pub, and I said, can I tokenise my house? What are you saying?
Yes, is the answer. Everything from a development property to a tree in a forest and kind of everything in between.
It's the community ownership part that actually gets me really excited. We might just start to see a lot of these opportunities springing up.
Last question.
Please.
When moon?
I can't answer that, and I won't answer it. All I will say is stay tuned. So thanks for being here, Brian.
Thanks, Adam.
What we wanted to do for this segment in particular is kind of take a deeper dive into some of the asset classes. And I guess when we were trying to think about which ones we should be talking about, I went by what ones do I get asked about the most, right? When we're going out at events or having calls with new people, or even if I'm just in the pub talking to somebody saying, here's what I do. It's generally one of the first things they'll come and say to me is, oh, can I tokenize a house? Can I tokenize a property? Can I tokenize real estate? So I did want to talk about real estate tokenization, maybe a little bit about what's possible, maybe some of the misconceptions about it, challenges, and let's see where it takes us. So first, I guess, your take on real estate. I'm sure you get the same questions to me. So if I was just a punter in a pub and I said, can I tokenize my house? What are you saying to me?
Yeah, I think absolutely. It's the thing that, I would say half of the inquiries that we all deal with is to do with tokenizing something. And of course, property is this enormous kind of asset class that has everything from, if you look at the calls that we get, it's everything from a development property in some city to a tree in a forest and kind of everything in between. And you're on about tokenizing houses and things like that. So I think we're on this kind of continuum where at the moment there's a certain amount possible. Mm-hmm. So you can go out there and today you can find both retail and professional offers of property assets. Now those assets tend to be wrapped in something and you're buying the wrapper that is tokenized rather than the underlying asset itself. So I think similar to some of the other assets that you can talk about in intellectual properties or anything else, property is complicated.
Yeah.
There's different rights attaching, different incomes attaching, and all of those can be split and sliced and diced. So the ability to tokenize any or each of them depends a little bit on the technology and a little bit on the underlying law. And then property gets even more complicated because it's not only countries and states and regions that have legal rules and regulations, everything from planning to environmental laws and you name it. Mm-hmm. So all of those things come together to form a property asset and you have enormous complications. So that's why I think that today when you look at it, where are we at today is you wrap that property into something that is understandable. It's in a company and you're selling some debt or some equity or whatever it happens to be. But the true innovation is when we will be able to get deeper into the assets themselves that will be tokenized. But I think we have some way to go on that.
Yeah, no, I think for sure. For me, when I answer the question, when people say, can I tokenize my house or can I tokenize real estate?
Yes.
I always kind of answer, with a question, which is maybe not the best way to do it, but I say yes, but for what?
And who are you going to sell it to?
And where are you going to sell it to them? So it's these key questions, I think, that it's important to touch on. It's like, as you said, there's fundamental differences if you want to tokenize a property in Ireland or if you want to tokenize a property in Mexico or Germany. As you said, it's different, right? So it's hard to create a one-size-fits-all for that. So I think it's always good to ask those key questions: where, why, how, who is it for? And I think it's an important distinction you made there. Is it a retail offer? Is it an institutional offer? There are differences of how you actually issue that token. So, yeah, I guess maybe if we were talking to the punter in the bar, he'd kind of be looking at us like we have 10 heads, maybe. But like for me, it still is, although these challenges exist and although these nuances exist, etc., it is still one of those asset classes that keeps me thinking, and I want to do more in it. I want to explore what's possible in it.
I think that it's such a big area. And I do think, everything will be tokenized in some way, shape or form eventually. And it's difficult to tell from where we are today what will be the first real big takeoff in property. Mm-hmm. And that's why I think we'll have to continue to experiment.
Yeah.
So the man or woman who has a forest and wants to tokenize a tree, it's difficult to know whether that will be a better bet than somebody with some sort of development property that's offering a mezzanine opportunity to somebody.
Yeah.
But I think that as an industry and as people involved in it, we need to provide as many opportunities for experimentation as possible. We put together things properly, professionally and correctly, and we see what fits.
Yeah, and that's such an important point. It's, again, back to asking the right questions, but it's just making sure you have all of your boxes checked. If you want to issue something in a particular jurisdiction, have you got the correct license or licensing partner? Have you got, the correct issuance? Are the correct prospectus in place for all of these places? Like it's these things I think a lot of people overlook when they think about, why am I tokenizing it or what can I do it for? I guess more on the opportunities for me as outside of that legal or regulatory, when I look at some of the benefits, it obviously creates some liquidity in a traditionally illiquid market, right? Yeah. When you buy a house, it's generally stuck there, right? Or you can sell it maybe, but generally you need a pretty high investment to get in there. So this is where fractional ownership starts to make a bit of sense. If people want to, get on the property ladder or in the real estate market, having that lower entry point is very significant, especially in certain parts of the world.
Yeah, it obviously one of the benefits of the tokenizing anything is that it becomes fungible.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the status of the market at the moment is that there's not enough product in there for true liquidity to exist. But again, it goes back to the experimentation until we keep putting asset out there, until there is participants in the market that trust the market, understand it, and that education piece happens. When we keep building that and we keep building the assets that are out there, I think that at some date in the future, liquidity will follow.
Yes.
But we're not going to get there probably in the next 6 months, but we're going to get there.
If you build it, they will open their wallets. That's what you're trying to say. The field of crypto. Okay, so I think, again, so I wanted to touch on liquidity. I wanted to touch on fractional ownership. I did also want to ask a question because, again, I'm getting these inbounds a lot, and you probably get it in your LinkedIn and Telegram, etc. Hey, I want to do this, or I have this property here and I want to do something. Of course, the answer is it depends, but
the answer is yes.
The answer is yes. So you can, of course, you can tokenize your cat if you want, right? You can tokenize anything, but then it's and issuing it and who are you marketing it to and et cetera, et cetera. So
one of the benefits of tokenization is, that fungibility, that involvement of community. Can you give us some thoughts on about what you see as opportunities for that community involvement in property?
Yeah, good question. I think for me, it's easy to always stay in that financial world and say, oh, look, there's upsides, etc. But it's the community ownership part that actually gets me really excited. I live in County Wexford in Ireland, and there I'm beside a very small, nice little pub. And I always have the use case thinking of, what if this pub was community owned? Or what if there was some level of community ownership where maybe I can buy a stake in that pub and then I get cheaper pints of Guinness, or I get a cheaper slice of pizza or something. But do you know what I'm trying to say? Is like,
you have a stake in it.
I have a stake in it, right? And maybe I can have a stake in it. But with what I'm trying to say, especially with not only pubs, but it's this community grassroots type thing. If you can have a stake in your local community, you have a lot more sense of pride. You want to keep the place, I think you kind of get where I'm trying to go with. I use that example a lot because I actually think it's so relevant, not only in Ireland, but all around the world. When you have local communities that could come together and basically co-own something. So if you have the owner of that pub, which maybe he doesn't have great credit, or maybe, who knows, right? But he may not want to go to his bank to do this. Offer it to your community. But again, it's that characteristic. What are you offering? Are you offering a share in the pub? Are you offering some of the returns? Are you offering just cheaper produce? Like, that's why I think it's back to those characteristics of the token and what is its intended purpose. So yeah, I think that's one I'm particularly excited about. Hopefully, again, with our toolkit, with some of our partnerships, we can start to explore some of these next year.
Fantastic. Another community one that we see is energy.
Yes.
Often controversial to have energy projects around a community. Partially that's to do with the non-community involvement. We have seen experiments, thoughts, ideas, plans using tokenization tools and techniques to engage more with the communities. What are your thoughts on energy?
Energy is actually, if I had to answer what would be my top asset classes, I think I would probably choose real estate. I'd probably choose energy and precious metals are three that I'm very excited about. And with energy in particular, I'm certainly not an expert in the space at all, but again, I'm seeing a massive, massive surge in projects around solar energy, community ownerships of solar parks. You could have a solar park in one part of your town, and that gives energy to, the surrounding houses that are in there. Co-ownership, right? What if I can't have solar panels on my roof, but my neighbour can? I should be able to maybe pay him for some of that, right? If he's got an excess. So it's this creating these energy trading communities and, as I say, co-ownership or cooperative ownership. I honestly think that's going to be a big driver for adoption, especially in the energy tokenization space, for sure. I guess the way I'd like to kind of take it, bringing it back more to a Defactor point of view, is how can our toolkit or how can our technology be used to enhance some of this stuff or make some of this easier? And I had a great conversation with a company in Turkey. They're tokenizing real estate. They're doing it through, I believe it's through a fund in the UK to then invest in properties in the UAE or something. I think that was the structure. And we were kind of brainstorming on how they could use some of our technology. So on one side, you of course have asset tokenization. So we could represent that project or that property, should I say, on the blockchain. But I think this is where the liquidity pools technology actually becomes very interesting, because I don't think a lot of, how would we say it, permissioned or regulated or security tokens, I don't think they've really been thinking about that, adding a DeFi layer, right? Adding a lending and borrowing layer against that asset, right? So again, it's all good to have the share of the property, but and then what? You could sell it on the secondary market for sure, you could hold on to it, but what if you needed to get access to liquidity? And what if there was a liquidity pool there that you could lock up this asset and take a loan against it?
So come to Defactor and learn.
I love it. But I suppose that's why I wanted to take it that way, because sometimes, especially because these asset classes are so broad, it can be kind of difficult to say, well, how does Defactor fit in there? We're trying to design this toolkit specifically so that multiple asset classes can be deployed, and we configure that logic on top, right? That's business logic, it's operational logic, it's regulatory stuff that maybe has to be baked into the pool, but fundamentally a lot of the operations are similar.
So would it be fair, Adam, to say that your ideal tokenization project would be a hectare of land with a windmill on it on top of a gold mine?
I was going to just say a tokenized. Do you ever see in The Simpsons when he has a solid gold house? I was going to say the solid gold house. Okay, so I do want to stick on practicalities again. Somebody comes to me to give an example, right? When we did the Alpha Bond project through Defactor Labs, there were different parties that we had to have, right? So obviously there was from the technology side, the regulatory side, tokenization partners, etc., right? Specifically with real estate, what are those different parties that you would want on the bus?
Yeah. So it's basically a long list, and one of the reasons that we're even here sitting here having this conversation is slowly over time these different participants in the market are getting more experienced, more familiar, and more trusting of the tokenization techniques and technologies. So I think the beginning piece is you need a law firm that understands what's happening. You are representing an asset on a blockchain. How is it that you do that properly in a safe way that people can trust that asset? Property tends to be lumpy, high value asset. So if you're going to tokenize it, you want to be sure that your legal frameworks are correct. So that's the beginning of it. Then when you look at how you either structure the underlying vehicle that you're going to tokenize, and indeed for the investor that's going to get involved, how is it that they understand how to account for this, how to hold this, how to custodize this? If you're a traditional kind of investor and you're used to buying stocks and bonds, your brokers and your banks custodize that, and it happens kind of, you're familiar with how it happens. All of a sudden, if you have a token, where do you put it? So you need to answer these questions, and you need to be familiar with how this is going to work. So I think increasingly, when we started looking at these things 5 or 6 years ago, we could tokenize a property and then everything else didn't work. Now we have across that whole ecosystem, from custodians to accountants to auditors to even tax authorities, all of these different players are able to understand what's going on. So that process of education, I think, is going apace. But literally, the entire value chain, we'll call it, of professional advisors and everything else needs to understand and needs to be involved.
When I would generally talk to people about the state of not only real estate but tokenization, or how is it going, probably 5 years ago I would have said the technology needs to catch up. It's still not quite there. That's not the case anymore. The technology, there's oodles of different solutions out there for tokenization. Again, if you asked me maybe 2 years ago or 3 years ago, I'd say, well, regulatory still very uncertain in certain jurisdictions. Now with things like MiCA in Europe and other other regulations coming in, we're getting more clarity. So now I think the final hurdle really is it's still a big user experience issue. People still have to deal with their wallets, their private keys, or I lost access to this. And it's that old kind of thing of, my mother or anybody should be able to kind of get in and use this. They can use Revolut. Now you're seeing people, 60, 70 years old using ChatGPT because they understand I ask something and it works. So we still have this user experience problem. It's not unique to real estate tokenization. I think this is an overall blockchain hurdle. It's getting better, but it's still, if somebody was to ask me some of the, the biggest hurdles, it's now that. But I don't just want to stick on challenges. Maybe this will sound a bit negative because we're kind of giving all the reasons why it's difficult. But
like at the end of the day, people are able to tokenize property.
Yeah.
And one of the challenges in why you don't do more of it is that you need more people to participate.
Yes.
So that piece of participation is important. You use Revolut as an example. If you're able to buy these things through an app that abstracted away some of the difficulties that come with using the classical, browser plug-in wallets and the like. If you're technically able, you know what you're doing there, but people get extremely uncomfortable when they're moving $20, $40, $100,000 through this and they don't know what they're doing.
I guess we talked a lot about the challenges. The opportunities, though, are very clear to see, right? So we could probably spend hours talking about that. I think one point that is important is a lot of the times you see, especially in commercial real estate, if there's a bit of a downturn or there's economic uncertainty, a lot of the times people will do a fire sale or flash sale. They try to sell something for as cheap as possible. With tokenization, it maybe gives the option for somebody, I'm going to sell a portion of this property. I'm going to be able to get myself some cash flow to get through whatever this period is. You might just start to see a lot of these opportunities springing up.
Well, the natural fit for blockchain is to allow that fractionalization and the liquidity to come to these otherwise sticky assets. Yeah. So in theory, these opportunities are going to arise. So it'll be very interesting to see as we go through the current cycle, what type of experiments will happen in the first case, and then if they're successful, how to scale it. I would say that if you look at Defactor, you look at how it is, like obviously if you take that asset, you stick it into a pool, you can then have people participate. How is it that that's going to work? What will be the special features that will make it work? I guess we're going to find out in 2024.
Mm-hmm. No, for sure. And hugely exciting. As I said, I'm very excited for not only real estate, but other asset classes that can be run through our toolkit, showcased. I think I've said it before, it's so much more powerful to show something and showcase than it is to say, hey, look, it's possible to do this thing. I think you will see a lot of that in 2024. We are hungry for community feedback as well. So we're talking about these asset classes. I do want some of our community to say, hey, you're forgetting about luxury goods or you're forgetting about whiskey or any of these things. I guess my answer would be we're trying to design this in such a way that it can be for multiple asset classes. That's the only thing I can say. And it's so important for us to partner with people that are experts in their respective fields. It's what we're doing.
I was just going to say that. If you're looking for an ideal person to approach us here when it comes to property and Defactor, we would like experienced developers who have projects that they understand and have delivered over the years. Yes. And they're saying, okay, I know how to deal with the banks. I know how to deal with, PE funds. I know how to deal with all of this. Here's some new tools. How do I bring these new tools to this portfolio that I have, and how do I experiment with it in order to add value? Those are the people who we want to talk to.
No, for sure. And exactly that. So it's developers, REITs, people that get the space and completely understand their landscape and their jurisdictions. And that's the same for precious metals, what we're doing with our partners at Oris and other partners we're working with. You want to try to make sure that it's their gig, it's their business, leave them to it. They've spent a long time trying to learn their place in the market. Exactly. So we come in, we offer what we can offer, and hopefully together we're stronger. And that's what I'm excited about. So again, I've said it before, I'll say it again. Next year is the year of collaboration and trying to move fast and get stuff out there.
One last question.
Please.
When moon?
When moon? Well, I'll just go out to my Lambo, actually. I just left my bag out there. I can't answer that and I won't answer it. All I will say is stay tuned.
This podcast is for information purposes only and should not be considered as financial advice. Please do your own research.